I have no interest in politics or politicians. I'm just a bystander like all of you, seeing in horror how most of the politicians are ending up ruining this country, this state, this city. Cry tears of blood every day that, what a beautiful city and what have we led it to.
How do you keep yourself sane when you write so much about history?
I think I enjoy the process, and history has always been my area of interest outside academics.
One word to describe Tipu Sultan.
Complex figure.
Also, I think your effigy was burnt.
I was 26, 27 years old. And in that lecture, I was actually reading out Tipu's own letters. So some of those letters I was reading out, quoting them verbatim. He's telling one person that I have converted 4 lakh kafirs or infidels in Calicut, go and kill this and burn that temple down and all of this. And while that was being done, suddenly, a section of the audience broke out in protest.
How easy or difficult is the process of getting yourself with the archives?
Well, when it comes to India, I think everything is made possible to ensure that the researcher's life is not easy.
Welcome to another powerful episode of the Sapna Rise podcast, where stories meet substance and books become blueprints for thought. I'm your host, Nijesh Shah, and today I am in conversation with one of the most thought-provoking voices shaping India's historical narrative, Dr. Vikram Sampath. An acclaimed historian, biographer, and public intellectual, Dr. Sampath is the author of best-selling and widely debated works like The Brave Hearts of Bharat, Gauhar Jaan, and the 2-volume biography on Veer Savarkar. A recipient of the Sahitya Academy Yuva Puraskar and a fellow of the Royal Historical Society London, Dr. Sampath's work resonates far beyond academia. His books have sparkled national conversations and found relevance at the highest levels of political, cultural, and intellectual circles across the country. And now, with his latest work, Tipu Sultan, the saga of Mysore's interregnum, Dr. Sampath turns his lens on one of the most polarizing figures in Indian history. Once hailed as a fearless warrior king, Tipu Sultan remains a deeply debated character. Was he a visionary leader who fought valiantly against the colonial powers, or a ruler whose legacy is marred by religious intolerance and authoritarian rule? In this episode, we go back beyond textbook narratives to explore the many shades of Tipu's legacy. His political brilliance, military innovations, strategic miscalculations, and the complex imprint he left behind on Indian history. Whether you studied him as a freedom fighter or questioned his darker chapters, this conversation opens the door to deeper questions. How should we remember history? And who decides what's worth remembering? So whether you're a history buff, a student, or someone who simply loves a good story with grit and debate, this episode is for you. So ladies and gentlemen, with the man himself, Dr. Vikram Sampath, let's dive in. So it's been an honor, a pleasure to have you. I've been an avid reader and I've also been an avid bookseller. So between reading and selling books, I've met a lot of authors. And seldom has it happened that an author has struck a chord in the way they have written. And it has happened with me when I've gone through and read some of your works. So I would really like to compliment you, your writing. It's been an absolute pleasure for the last few days studying you and your works.
Thank you, Mr. Nijesh. Such a pleasure to be here. Always a pleasure to be with anything associated with Sapna books. And I think the kind of heart and soul that you put into the whole dry business of selling books, I think that's what sets you apart in the whole country.
Well, that's very kind of you. I would like to start off For the first time, I was mentioning you off camera that I've got a pen and a paper because there's so much of research that you have done in your books. You've been a PhD holder, Sahitya Academy, Yuva Puraskar winner, historian, a man with many hats. You've got 10 books to your credit, right? You started off with the splendors of Royal Mysore in 2008. You've spoken about how the Vadiyars, the impact of Vadiyars in Karnataka's growth history, and also the impact of Mysore for developing India in your book in 2008. You then wrote about Gauhar Jan, the gramophone queen, or the girl, the singer, the dancer from Kolkata in 2010. Then you've gone about it writing in 12 and 19, Voice of Veena, and then you wrote your much acclaimed Savarkar, the volume 1 and 2 in 2019 and 21. Savarkar, again, we hope to touch base upon a little bit about Savarkar in this conversation, but a man who is not much known, a freedom fighter himself, much different from the Mahatma Gandhi that we all know of today. Then you've gone about writing Women Off the Records in 21, Indian classical music in 2022, and then in 22, The Brave Hearts of Bharat. In 24, the very acclaimed Waiting for Shiva. And in 24 October, you've brought this very interesting, fat book.
Fat is the operative word there.
Yes, but a lot of research-driven book, Tipu Sultan. So how do you keep yourself sane when you write so much about history?
No, I think I enjoy the process, and history has always been my area of interest outside academics. Not studying history in school as a subject, but as this whole journey of discovery. It's almost like a investigative journalist looking around for cues, and something leads to something else. There's no fixed route that this is how you need to do the research, and you stumble upon new discoveries and new revelations which you never knew about, and that's what gives me the intellectual high and the zest to go on with it as much as I can now. Literally trying to multiply this effort beyond my own personal work related to history, but also through two organizations, a foundation, FIHCR, to foster new scholarship in Indian history, and also another company called NAAV AI, which is using AI to translate this to different Indian languages.
Wow.
So this is, I think it's something when you enjoy, and I feel so grateful, Mr. Shah, that, for people who can make their passion their profession. Very few people get that privilege. You're stuck in jobs which you don't relate to, and you just need to do it. For the money can be a motivator only for a limited extent. Yes. And I realized that being stuck in the corporate world for 10 years, that was taking care of the bills, but what about nourishment to the soul, to the intellect? So that way, I don't see it as a drudgery.
No, fantastic. And, because you've written so many books, the immediate thought that comes to my mind is, how you're able to stay so unbiased when you do your research. When I read Tipu Sultan, the facts that you have put forward in the book, right? You've not given your opinion in terms of, this is right or this is wrong. So how difficult or easy it is for you to really vacuum yourself out when you're doing your research, and when you're right into a lot of research, but you still have to keep your opinions aside. So how is the process when you are looking at books like these?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's a very difficult conundrum for any writer, particularly a historian. Today, history has become so polarizing. It's also a political minefield. Political parties, ideological groupings, all of them appropriating various sides of the debate, pro and anti, and people expect you to pigeonhole yourself into those boxes or conform to boxes and labels. But a true historian is someone who looks at characters of the past beyond these pigeonholes of black and white. I think there's a huge continuum of grey, which is what is interesting to explore. I mean, as human beings, we all have our blacks, we have our whites, we have good and bad equally in each of us. But in between, there is, I think, more nuance to our thought process, to our lives, and that's what people in the past also, had. It's one thing to, we all come with biases, let us be clear there, that all of us have our preconceived ideas or biases, but the whole moral obligation, particularly that is put on a historian's shoulder, is when he or she commits that to print or to paper, you need to almost detach yourself from the entire process of being so involved or emotionally connected to the character. So a historian's job, I always say, is to illuminate the archives, all the sources that are there in multiple archives, not only within India, outside India, in various languages, in various formats. If your farther you go back in history, you would have sources in, coins, inscriptions, palm leaf manuscripts, all of those colonial records, and to sieve through all of that and to put it in a dispassionate way, because the common public is not interested in the whole process of the research. So our role is to throw light on the archive, bring that to the public opinion, not sit in judgment. I think it's so unfair to judge characters of the past by yardsticks and definitions of today. We need to present all sides of the picture, and don't infantilize your readers. I think they know well enough to make up their mind. But I keep saying, whether you like or hate somebody because of preconceived ideas, let your love or hatred for them be informed. Basis that you make your decision, and it's not the historian's job to be a judge, prosecutioner, jury, all of it wrapped into one. We just have the privilege of being able to write it out in paper. I think it does a lot of disservice to the character of the past if we get into too much of judgments, and that's what I try to avoid in all my books.
So a follow-up question to, you spoke about archives, how important historians really need to dive into the multiple avenues of getting information from archives to meeting people. How easy is this process, or how difficult is this process? Specifically, if you can throw some light on the archives part. I mean, India has museums, they have palaces, they have a lot of other institutions where archives are kept and probably not really disclosed or shown. So how easy or difficult is the process of getting yourself with the archives?
Well, when it comes to India, I think everything is made possible to ensure that the researcher's life is not easy. You have to go through so much of bureaucratic red tape, even today. And we speak of Digital India and all of this. The National Archives of India, which is the largest repository of material, right, from colonial and, even before that, to get access there is so difficult for a layperson. You have to go through multiple hoops of permissions and all of that. They have an online portal now called Abhilekh Patal, where you get some of this which is digitized. But just comparing it with how it is outside, a lot of my research, since I deal with early modern and modern India more, so a lot of the archives are in London, and the British library there, the India office library office there, which is the repository of, I think, the maximum amount of material about 16th, 17th, 18th century and thereafter of India, both of the East India Company and the British Raj. So meticulously documented and so easily accessible for a scholar. You can, even you're not a British national, you can register from where you are so that you don't waste time when you go there. In few minutes they give you a card to access it. You can take your camera or phone along and take photographs of all the pictures, unless it's a very brittle, manuscript or something.
And it's the case across Western Europe and things in the US, or it's only more relevant in Britain and London?
Yeah, I think US archives too, some I have accessed, which make life a lot more simpler.
Right.
Many of those are housed with universities and so on. And so those also quite easy to access. India particularly, it makes things very difficult. They are very scattered. Most of them don't even catalog stuff. And it getting access is almost like, you'd rather allow termites to eat your documents but not make them accessible to a researcher, which is very sad.
So while you do all your research and you get access to your archives, and when you get to the process of writing a book, and then the book is written, and then it's come out as a production, and we have the book in hand, and then when you talk about your work, do you often get judged in terms of you are towards a certain angle? Because there was an interview which I heard of yours where you've spoken about a particular incident where you spoke about I think Tipu Sultan, and then there were a group of people who didn't like it. They threw paper rockets at you. So how does this? Does it really? Also, I think your effigy was burnt.
Yes.
So can you throw some light of what happened? What was the incident?
Well, it wasn't too far from where we are sitting. It was here at Dumlur, the Bangalore International Centre's old office, a small little auditorium that they had. And that was in 2008. And my first book, Splendors.
It was for of the Splendors of Mysore.
Splendors of Royal Mysore. So that book covered about 600 years of the Vadiyar history, right from Yaduraya, who founded the dynasty in 1399, to 1947 with Jayachamraj Vadiyar. And in these 600 years, you had these 40 years of an interregnum or an intermission where Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan usurped the throne from the Vadiyars. Now, that particular lecture was on the interregnum period only. And so I didn't know that. I mean, I was 26, 27 years old. I thought, you have the facts, you're just presenting it to people. And obviously, this interregnum period arouses a lot of heckles among people. People are very sensitive either side, for and against. And in that lecture, I was actually reading out Tipu's own letters. Tipu was an extremely erudite man. He was very well read. His library had the widest range of books on all kinds of topics in various languages, largely Persian. And he used to write and document everything of his life, including his dreams, what all dreams he saw every night. The next morning, he dreamt very vividly. And he used to also maintain a record, a dream register.
Oh, wow. Yes.
And he used to also, write these letters to his commanders, big control freak who would ensure that every step of who does what is choreographed, and he's also giving them updates of what he has done. So while normally a historian would say, 18th century ruler, we don't have sources, here there's a plethora of sources and coming straight from the horse's mouth. Your protagonist is talking these things. So some of those letters I was reading out, quoting them verbatim. He's telling one person that I have converted 4 lakh kafirs or infidels in Calicut, go and kill this and burn that temple down and all of this. And while that was being done, suddenly, a section of the audience broke out in protest, and they started, as you said, hurling paper rockets at the podium and shouted the lecture down. The organizers got scared. They took me away to the green room. But my father was sitting in the audience, and that's why these days he doesn't attend any of my events, I guess. So someone went to him and thrust a letter in his pamphlet or something, some Tipu fan club or something like that this person was from. He said, you have only one son, and if you want him to live long, please ask him to mind what he says and writes. And so obviously that night at home with my parents, they got really what is happening. And this was my first book, and we were unsure.
And you were pretty young at that age.
Yeah, and we're not sure that, what landmines to expect in this journey. And 2-3 weeks later, my bad luck, very, close on the heels of this bad experience, there was a article series that I was writing for the Deccan Herald on the Diwans of Mysore. And the first and the last article came and ended with what I wrote that because it didn't go beyond because of the trouble it caused. It started with obviously Diwan Purnaya, who was close confidant of Hyder. He was Tipu's confidant, and then turned traitor, and then became the Diwan of the Vadiyars after they were restored. Very, very difficult character to judge. So about him, there were some things where Tipu also came into the article, and that again created a furor. Protesters gathered at the Deccan Herald office in MG Road, and the editor was, and I was working then in my day job, which I had those days in Citibank and then Hewlett Packard, and this editor called me saying, some protesters have come and they want you to seek an apology for what you have written. I said, no, over my dead body, because whatever I have written is based on facts, and I can show them the sources. They were not happy. The editor actually told them, you can write twice the size which we gave Vikram. We'll give you the size to write a counter article. but they were not the kinds who were into writing and reading, obviously. So they created a huge ruckus. They burnt that effigy of mine, all of that. Of course, the editor sent me that burning. It was a very badly made effigy, by the way. So they sent me that, and I made it my Orkut profile.
DP.
Yeah, DP for a very long time. But then that created a lot of commotion at home, and I can imagine the kind of stress I've put my parents through, family and parents too, because we are normal middle class people who are just trying to make our livelihood comfortable. To get into all this politics and protests is not something we had signed up for. And so my mother, who used to keep very poor health, she extracted a promise from me that in future you're never going to talk or write about Tipu Sultan. And I kept the promise to her till the time she was alive. She passed away in 2018. And this story was in my head all through. I really knew, even while the first book was being written, that one needs to zoom in to this 40 years. Because that was the period which probably made and unmade India. The amount of commotion, crisis, chaos that whole of India, faced. And immediately after Tipu Sultan, I mean, barely a few years later, you had the Maratha War, where the Marathas also lost. And then it was the slavery of India to British colonial rule began. So this period was so important, and I wanted to go there. In that book, it was just a small section of a 600-year journey. So, but what to do when your mother tells you have to listen? But after that, I thought, now that the promise I made to the person, if she's only not there, then the promise is also not valid. So I can break the promise. But so that's why there was so much in my head already for these 16, 17 years that's why this book turned out to be this fat and intimidating.
Since October 24, there's no...
Yeah, touch wood, I think. My
no
mother is choreographing something from heaven to see that there are no
one has come
no
and
attacks.
troubled you
Yeah,
so far.
Thankfully, touch wood.
Right. But before we get into the book, I always wanted to know from you how India fell into the British colonialism. Right? We had the Mughals who were up in the north, the decline of Mughal Empire, and then that's when there was unrest between the kingdoms across the country, and then Tipu Sultan rose after his father Hyder Ali, who gave the kingdom to him. So why and how did India fall into the entire colonialism? Why was it that India fell in the hands of Britishers?
It's a long topic, but I think once with the death of Aurangzeb, 1707, the Mughal Empire slowly starts disintegrating. You had small rulers, most of them infighting. You had the Sayyid brothers, FIHCR, so many people manipulating stuff there in Delhi. And parallelly, you have the rise of another huge power, which is the Marathas. So the 18th century can very truly be called the Maratha century.
Right.
And we think the British took India from the Mughals, but actually they took it from the Marathas.
Right.
Because as Peshwa Bajirao the First and later Nana Sahib and others, the way they enlarged the kingdom, the Maratha Empire, was almost from, they would say, Atak to Katak and up to Rameshwaram, the whole of Bengal, all of that, some with lot of excesses also. A large part of India was under Maratha control. Even the Mughal emperor became a puppet, Shah Alam and others. There's that couplet that it was only up to Palam, that Shah Alam's reign, Delhi to Palam, so which is where we have the airport. So there was hardly much of the Mughal left, but they kept him there as a puppet, and the Marathas were in control. But the fall of the Mughals also led to simultaneously lots of small principalities then claiming independence. You had the Awadh Nawabs, the Bengal Nawabs, you had Hyderabad, the Nizam, who was a subsidiary of the Mughal, now saying, the Mughal itself is so weak, so we can have our own independent kingdom. And then the Arcot Nawab in Tamil Nadu. So all these people fighting there. And since it was a sudden event, there were numerous claimants to the thrones there. So wars of succession, two people fighting. In this book also you have the Hyderabad and Arcot, so many claimants to the throne, and everyone fighting with each other, saying, I want the throne. There's no morals, no scruples, nothing, no principles or ideology.
The Britishers' divide and rule policy was...
No, and the British and the French, we forget the French, they took sides on opposite
Tipu
sides.
Sultan took French support.
Yeah. So even, Hyderabad, you had Nasir Jung and Nizam Ali and Muzaffar Jung and so many people. One faction would be supported by the British, the other by the French. That led to the Carnatic Wars, which went on for a long time. You had also in Arcot, Chanda Sahib and finally Muhammad Ali, who established the Walaja dynasty there. So there also British on one side, French on the other side. I think Indian powers kept thinking that just as we are fighting among ourselves, these European powers are also yet another player in the chess board. They did not foresee that these are deeper elements. They had deeper designs, more sinister designs of actually colonizing you and taking over, the kingdom. And the Wadiyar becomes weak, and then you have Hyder Ali rise to power. The Marathas they go under eclipse with the third battle of Panipat, which they lose in 1761 with Abdali. But after that, for a short period, they again bounce back with Peshwa Madhav Rao. Now, Peshwa Madhav Rao, if he had lived long enough, I think the history of India would be very different. He died at 27 or 28 due to tuberculosis. And so after that, you see the Maratha Empire also collapse. His younger brother Narayan.
Quite a powerful empire.
Yeah, his brother Narayan Rao, he is murdered by his own paternal uncle Raghunath Rao or Raghoba. He's literally running in the ramparts of the palace, screaming for help, and the Peshwa actually been murdered in broad daylight at the behest of his own uncle. So all of this happening. So once the Marathas also get weakened, Tipu and Mysore are one of the last bastions against British designs. But he was also taking French help. Right. So if he had won by any stretch of imagination, maybe India would have been under French rule. At least Mysore and Karnataka would have been in French rule, and we would be having this conversation in French instead of English, which is a possibility. But yeah, none of the Indian powers understood what the European designs were. Right. Tipu also sending emissaries to French Emperor Louis XVI and so on, not realizing that he was as bad as the British Empire. It's just.
But I think for Tipu, it was more so of spreading Islam in the country, making him the ruler of the entire country. So I think that we'll get to in terms of whether Tipu was a warrior or a freedom fighter versus was he a tyrant. We'll get to that. Yeah. But very interesting, you spoke of how India got into the British colonialism, and this is probably because of the infidelity of the kingdoms in operation in India, and plus Indians trying to take help from foreign powers, and they just entered the entire country. Speaking of the book now, which I'm really wanting to get started, the Britishers celebrated Tipu Sultan's death with a declaration of public holiday, right? So, and Tipu Sultan famously said that it's better to live like a tiger than 1,000 years as a sheep.
One doesn't know whether it's truly attributed to him. These are part of those myth-making.
Okay. But before we begin the book, if you could summarize and let us know on the impact of Tipu Sultan, because on one side, when he dies, British celebrates like there's no tomorrow and declaring holiday. So the impact of Tipu Sultan on the Britishers after the third or the fourth Anglo-Mysore War.
No, declaring holiday is one thing, but they memorialized the fall of Srirangapatna in so many ways. You have all these paintings that were done by Porter, by several people in London. Imagine these people never even came to India, let alone to Karnataka. But sitting in London and interviewing some of these East India Company officials who were part of the Mysore campaign, they painted pictures of how the Ranganatha Swami temple would look, how the fort would look, how the storming of the fort on the 4th of May happened. And these exhibitions were held for several years there to packed houses in London. Slowly, there was a lot of mystique around this Hyder and Tipu in London, saying who are these people who are causing this kind of threat to our rule. And there was people who would fight here, go back, carry tales again of barbarism, of bravery, whatever it was. It rankled, I think, a lot of curiosity among British civil society to know about Mysore and its rulers. And there were plays also that got commissioned soon about the Mysore fall. So they were memorializing it in art. And obviously they had reason to celebrate because it took the British 40 years and 4 wars to capture Mysore. Because right from 1767 69, when the first Anglo-Mysore war was fought, and the last one, the British kept trying to capture the place, but it was not possible, and credit to that goes to the father and son. But there too some nuance needed, that the first 2 wars, the first and the second Anglo-Mysore war, were fought under Hyder Ali's leadership.
Right.
And in both of those, Hyder was a lot more astute strategist than his son was. He beat the British black and blue, and literally in the first Mysore war, he chases the British to the very gates of Madras, which was their seat of power, the Fort St. George, and makes them sign a very, very humiliating treaty.
Right.
In fact, he makes a caricature also done of the Madras British governor literally sitting at his feet and, rubbing his nose at his, heels, literally saying, "Naak kata diya."
Right.
So, that sort of celebration, and these discussions were happening about him and the Mysore War in the British Parliament. People were raising questions. The East India Company was a traded company, a public traded company. Their stock shares were falling. The board of directors were alarmed, saying, "What the hell is happening here?" The second war also, 1780 to 84, the first part of that war is led by Hyder. There too, both son and father and son, they managed to defeat them wholly and squarely. There's the Battle of Polilur,
Right.
where even now, if you go to the Darya Daulat in Srirangpatna, on the walls you have murals of the Battle of Polilur, where this Colonel Bailey, who was defeated, he's shown like this very effeminate guy sitting in a palanquin and chewing his thumb, whereas Tipu and Hyder are these macho men who are going on their elephant and all of this. So even propaganda art worked both ways. They were also doing propaganda art. Even when these people won, they also memorialized it and celebrated it. So it's not something only they did, the British did. So that also, these people defeat Bailey because of the Mysore rockets that Mysore was famous for, which we can talk about.
Yes.
But also several other people, Hector Munro, who was one of the leading lights of the Battle of Buxar, Battle of Plassey. He had defeated Shah Alam, the Nawab of Awadh, the Nawab of Bengal. But in Mysore, in the Mysore wars, he literally has to throw all his ammunitions into a well in Kanchipuram and run to Madras to save his life. And in the middle of the second Mysore war, Hyder dies in the war camp, and Tipu takes on, but he brings the war to a fantastic conclusion. You had the siege of Mangalore,
Right.
where Campbell, who was sieged there almost for several months, 1 year or something, where they are reduced to such beggary. They literally have to eat rodents and keep alive. Diseases and epidemics start, going for the British, who are holed up inside the Mangalore fort. And finally they surrender. So 1784, that war ends with the Treaty of Mangalore, which is probably the last document where an Indian power had an upper hand against any European power. So to credit to father and son for bringing Mysore to that level of military strength and diplomacy. But once the father leaves the stage, the third and fourth Mysore war, which Tipu had to fight independently, both of it he loses so badly. In the third war, you had Lord Charles Cornwallis, who was the Governor General, who comes and encircles Srirangapatna, and half of his kingdom is given away. It's a large alliance that is formed between the Marathas, the Nizam, and the British, a tripartite alliance. Half his kingdom is gone. He has to give 3.5 crores as war indemnity,
Right.
which was much more than the budget of the state at that time. Now you can't even get an apartment
small
in
plot
Bangalore for that money. But to raise that money, he had to give away 2 of his sons, Abdul Khalik and Muizuddin, as hostages to Cornwallis. Still, he paid that. And in the last war, which was on 4th of May 1799 in Srirangapatna, they completely encircle, that is Richard Wellesley, the next Governor General. He ensures that Cornwallis gave Tipu another lease of life, which Wellesley did not want to. And so he ensures that he is killed in that war. So when we say that, the British demonized Tipu that is often said. There could be an element of truth there, but actually he never won any war against them when he fought independently. He was a brave, valiant soldier, very, very, brave in his outlook and the military acumen, but not a patch on his father. His father actually won wars, whereas he, when it came to the British, he lost all the wars. He had very few instances of success against the Marathas. Then, of course, perennial problem in Coorg, Kodagu and Malabar, North Kerala. There, of course, through brute force, barbarism and all of that, both of them managed to crush it. But when it came to even kingdoms like Travancore, Tipu actually loses the battle repeatedly. So one needs to assess it in a larger context, saying why would they demonize someone whom they've defeated? It was Hyder who gave them such nightmares. They would have probably demonized him more. But they actually, all British chroniclers, when you see Mark Wilkes or you see, Bowring, the commissioner of Mysore, Bowring Hospital and all, Mark Cubbon, after whom we have Cubbon Park, all these people, when they write, they have written very glowing accounts of Hyder. They say, though he was cruel, he was a very bigoted man, but when it came to religious policy, when it came to tolerance, he just did not mind. He just wanted power. These other details did not come into his mindset. I think with Tipu, that became another layer of his cruelty based on religious identity.
But there are instances where he speaks about religious tolerance. He will get to that, but a bit about Hyder and Tipu again. Largely that you're speaking of. Hyder rose from a military commander to the ruler of Mysore, but at the same time he did not sideline the Wadiyars. He kept the Wadiyars at the helm of the kingdom. Now, even though he was a ruler, the military was under him. Unlike Tipu, who completely destroyed the Wadiyar family.
Correct.
So why was there a difference in ideology between the father and son? And you've already mentioned about Hyder Ali being the one who really made an impact when it came to winning wars against the Britishers. But Tipu also had his impact in terms of traumatizing the Britishers in his way. Can you throw some light on the way Hyder operated versus Tipu operated?
So Hyder's life, the arch of his life, if one sees the ascent, he was literally, I think, destiny's chosen child. He was born to this couple called Fateh Muhammad, who was with the Nawab of Sira, and Majida Begum. He was in around Kolar. That's where he was born in 1721. And there's this very ominous prediction that an astrologer had made that this child is inauspicious for the father, and he may. Many of the relatives said, let's give him poisoned milk and kill the child. But Fateh Muhammad said, no, I don't believe in all that, and he let the child live. Things would have been very different, I think, in the history of India if that had happened perchance. But in a very perverse way, that prediction comes true. And when he is all of 3.5 years old, his father is killed in battle. And he owed a lot of money to another man called Abbas Quli Khan. And this guy comes and raids the house of Fateh Muhammad. All the women are molested, the treasures are taken away. And to add insult to injury, two of these boys, Hyder, who is about 3-4 years old, and his elder brother Shahbaz, who is about 8 years old, they are both put in a huge nagada, this kettle drum, and beaten upon to make them almost faint. And at that time, somehow by stealth, his mother Majida Begum, she runs away from the house and goes all the way to Srirangpatna to plead with the Maharaja of Mysore, saying, my poor fatherless children, please show some mercy. And the Maharaja, Dodda Krishna Raja Vadiyar, he takes mercy, not knowing what he was getting into, poor man. He repays all the debt. And he also promises, they are taken into Mysore's protection. One of their relatives is in the Mysore service. And the Maharaja actually assures them that once these boys come of age, we'll take them into the army. And he kept up his word. So both these boys, they enter the Mysorean army. Hyder makes his first entry in the siege of Devanahalli here in Bangalore in 1749. But look at his astuteness, his cunning, machinations, which he'd put all modern politicians to shame, where in only 12 years, 1749 to 1761, while the whole of the Deccan was in tumult, we had these Carnatic wars I was talking about, everyone fighting with everyone, one man who actually got the maximum benefit of this all was Hyder. And running with the hare, hunting with the hounds, literally, the situations so develop in such a way that in just 12 years, he manages to overthrow the very man who was his benefactor. By 1761, he is able to take over and usurp the throne of the same Vadiyar who had helped him in such dire situations in childhood. So you can imagine what his mind and strategy would be. But yeah, I think there was some element of goodness and humanity left somewhere. And he knew that this was a Hindu majority kingdom, and the Hindu Raja who's been so kind to you, you're taking over the kingdom.
Was it really kindness, or he wanted to gain the...
That's what I mean, the sympathy. No, he knew that the people would rise in rebellion if the Maharaja was completely eliminated from the thing. But so what he did is, it was a charade. It was a show, like figurehead puppet, on the throne. After every war, all the trophies of the war are gone and kept at his feet. He bows before him. Every proclamation comes in His Royal Highness's name. But everyone knew that that was just a, figurehead. There was the real power was with somebody else, and everyone knew this. And once these Maharajas, one dies, then a new fellow comes, they all get suffocated. Who is this guy who is, interfering in our power? If they try a little bit to flex their muscles and power, or, assert their position, very mysteriously a glass of milk would go to their rooms by night, and by morning they are dead. And then you put another infant on the throne, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, who's playing with toys. That boy is put as the Maharaja. By the time that man comes of age and he is able to have a child of his own, he is killed. Or if he tries to, assert himself. So he followed this kind of policy. And as I said, for him, I think that scarred memories of childhood, very vengeful and driven by revenge. In fact, after he takes over Mysore's leadership, the first person he takes revenge on is that man who came and beat them in the Nagada. He was in Doddaballapura, and so he goes there and takes his revenge, and that person is done away with. So after 20-30 years, that thing was still in his heart, that this is the person I have to take revenge against once I assume power. So I think he had a very clear vision that this is where I need to go. The ends is all mattered, the means did not matter. So as long as he had that power, it really did not matter to him what people prayed, which religion. He himself was not a very devout Muslim himself, and he did everything which maybe Islam forbade, including drinking. He was hugely given to intoxication, and a very, very sensually driven man. He had a huge harem, almost 4,000, 5,000 concubines all over Karnataka, every place, and very people's fundamental rights. Everyone operated under fear. More than 4 people could not gather in a crowd. There would be spies all the time, listening to what people are talking. If anyone is found to be conspiring against him, they are done away with. And worse, they used to send these dolu, the ladies who would go, Koravanjis, who would go with soothsayers to various villages. They would be sent to also spy inside houses to see if there are any young pretty girls. And if there was someone like that, they would bring the message to him, and the next day the army would go and pick those girls, and they would be found in his harem. So like that, he was a very different kind of person, very coarse, very much given to abusive language that he used to use with others, and even physical appearance. He, after taking on the kingdom of Mysore, something came on him. He shaves off his entire face, even eyebrows, eyelashes, hair, beard, everything. So he's and he's quite fair. So you can imagine how he would have looked, like a very ghoulish person, only eyes popping out. So that is the image we get of Hyder. And coming from such a difficult childhood, he never got the opportunity to read and write. He was illiterate all his life.
His son.
Aha. So the only literary achievement of his life was to learn to write the first alphabet of his name, which was her. Beyond that, he didn't know. But he spoke many languages: Hindustani, then Marathi, Kannada, Tamil, Telugu, all these languages. A little bit of French, because the French were there in the court, but no Persian, no Arabic. Not that way, radically Islamized yet. And he gave people the freedom to do what they want. But outside, in campaigns outside Mysore, especially as I said in Kodagu, in Bidanur, and in Malabar, there were also religious atrocities. People converted. People who were converted were made into something called a Chela Brigade.
Okay.
So they were all Chelas.
Right.
He makes part of the army. So that was there. But sum total, this is the kind of picture that emerges of Hyder. But interestingly, for a man who was so otherwise violent and a terror for the British, he himself was very scared of his wife. So it is said that his wife, this lady called Fatima or Fakhrun Nisa,
Okay.
so she had a very caustic tongue, and so he would go with lot of fear and trepidation to her chambers,
Okay.
and when she would give him a whiplash with her tongue, scold him and this, that. So quickly he would come running away. And then he had all his male friends whom they would sit and drink and, crack all kinds of dirty jokes. And so he would tell these people that the British sword is more easier to face than my wife's tongue. So, so this lady seems to have been a very powerful woman. She controlled not only the husband but also the son.
Okay.
She decides whom he was to marry. Hyder had a choice of someone, but she overrules it, and she suggests someone else. Of course, Tipu later marries both. So, but but then I think she was a very powerful and impactful lady who also interfered in the day-to-day administration. Even after her husband's death, she would take part in many of these things, including Hyder's mother, the Majida Begum, whom I mentioned. When he was on the verge of getting defeated in a battle and so on, she comes to the battlefield in a palanquin and she says, I've come to pray for you and bless you. And then the fortunes change the next day and so on. So I think the women of the family also, they were quite something to reckon with.
I'm not sure whether it's passed down the generation, men being scared of their wives, but on a lighter note, it's very surprising.
Yeah.
As you mentioned that on one side, he being so powerful and so courageous, and the other side, he's his wife's man. Yeah. But interestingly, we spoke about Hyder Ali and the way he went about his operations in his time. How different was it with Tipu Sultan?
So yeah, I think father and son also, they had a very tensed relationship.
Okay.
We are all taken in by that Sanjay Khan serial,
Sword of Tipu Sultan.
where that man who played Hyder and Sanjay Khan who played Tipu,
Right.
they are shown to be, so much of love and affection.
Lovable,
Lovable to each other. Yes. But actually it was not so in reality. The documents prove otherwise. So Hyder, since he had no education, he always wanted his children, the two boys he had, Tipu and Karim, another younger son, he wanted them to have good education. So, but he didn't know whom to put them under. So he just puts them under some Maulvi or someone. And 2 years after that, he just has a surprise examination saying, let me see what you have learnt. And he is aghast to hear the kind of things the child is talking about. And he gets into a rage. He was given to a lot of fit of rage. And he tells the son, the Maulvi, that, if this is the kind of teaching you are going to give my son, he is going to become a rabid Maulvi and a bigot and not a ruler. And so he dismisses him and then puts this guy under military training. And repeatedly, because Hyder, as I said, to make the Hindus of Mysore safe and protected, he had banned slaughter of cows and bulls and oxen and all of this. And Tipu, as a young boy, would go and hunt those very animals and kill them. And so for that, he would be put by his father into solitary confinement for a week, Nobody should interact with him. He's literally put in imprisonment for 6 weeks. A lot of punishments, corporal punishments, I think very high. So a lot of daddy wounds for this man. So and later also, when he's 21 years old, Tipu, in the middle of a war with the Marathas near Melkote, there's this place called Moti Talab. There's a war, Battle of Chinkurli. So there, in the middle of the battle, Tipu does something or says something which he gets annoyed with. He just grabs a cane from somebody's hand and thrashes him black and blue in front of everybody. And so for a 21-year-old boy to actually, man, not boy, to be beaten in front of others by your father, you can imagine what that does to you. He is also throws his tantrum. He dashes his turban and his sword on the ground and says, to hell with you and this battle. I'm not going to fight anymore, and he goes away. And later, after his death, the British actually discover a very curious document in Tipu's bedchamber, which is an agreement he had signed for his father. There are about 8 articles in that which says, I will not lie, I will not steal. If I lie, then I can be given so many whiplashes. If I'm found stealing something, this can be done to me. If I am conspiring against the Sarkar, I can be hanged. All of these, one list of
treaty with his own
father, which showed that the father suspected that he could do all this, or he had already attempted to do some of these. Otherwise, why would you actually put those? And then I'm signing this in my full senses, hosho havas mein, I'm signing this, and there is a sign and royal seal. So it was a very tenuous, I think, relationship between the father and son. And Hyder, in several, anecdotes, he tells other people, including Purnaya, who is his confidant, that all that I have built with my hard work, this fellow, because of his lack of foresight and diplomacy, he will squander it away, and our family will come to the streets. And unfortunately, that's what happened for their household. And so that's why I think he started reposing faith in several other people whom he used to start adopting as possible heirs. There was one guy called Sheikh Ayaz. Sheikh Ayaz was actually a converted Nair from Malabar who he made into a Chela, but later he was a very loyal and able guy. So they had given him Bidnur to administer. And Hyder's plan was, after his death, he will divide the Mysore into 2-3 parts and give one to each of these. So Tipu was not thought of as the successor by the father. There's one more guy called Muhammad Ali, who was a very brave soldier. He said, this is my adopted son. So I think this insecurity was there in his growing up years, a strained relationship with the father, who never took him seriously or gave him much respect. Of course, he also complimented him a lot when he loved him for sure. Even in the middle of the war, when he has to go and meet the Nizam, this guy Hyder is very scared. He said, this Nizam is one who kills his own brother. So how will he leave my son? So please take care of him. And he used to send other people. But despite that, I think that respect that a father needs to give to a son, maybe that was missing somewhere. And that's insecurity seeps into Tipu Sultan too. And so he constantly needs to prove himself. And it's said that a lot of people who become dictators, who become cruel people, they've had difficult childhoods, especially with their fathers. And fathers who are not understanding, who look you down. They have this external validation that they need from others. So Tipu, probably his cruelty also stemmed somewhere from there, where constantly to prove. So once he comes to power, the first thing he does is to eliminate all these rivals. Sheikh Ayaz is done away with. Muhammad Ali dies mysteriously. So all of this, and he tries to consolidate power in his own hands. And for him, he has not worked hard to get this kingdom. So he says, what is the need to have this Wadiyar on the throne? Let's do away with it. And he assumes, Hyder never called himself the king of Mysore. Whereas this man calls himself the Padshah, the Sultan of Mysore. Mysore is Islamized. In fact, the name itself becomes Sarkar-e-Khudadad, or the God-given kingdom. And names of places are changed. Mysore becomes Nazarabad, Coorg becomes something else, Jalalabad, Farrukhabad, all these kind of names given to different places. Persian is introduced as replaces Kannada as the court language. today also in accounts departments in Karnataka, you have so many Persian terms. All this khata and this and these are all coming from that era, which we have not changed. So the infiltration of Persian coins, Persian script, and a complete Islamization and change of the character and culture of Mysore is something he tries to do. Maybe stemming out of that same insecurity, and I have to establish myself, otherwise it will be taken away.
Establish myself and my religion.
Yes, both.
That was both. So out of the two of them, who was more religion tolerant? Was it Hyder Ali or was it Tipu? Because there are instances like we've discussed that Tipu was a very complex character. A very polarizing character. So in one instance, he is going about establishing Islam, establishing his religion across Mysore. And on the other, you've mentioned that in Sringeri, Shankaracharya, after the Maratha attack in 1791, he also offered support and financial aid. So what does this interaction tell about Tipu's relationship with the Hindu spiritual institutions like Sringeri?
Yeah, that's a good question because, so certainly, of course, compared to his father, this man was more of a religious bigot.
Right.
And that came, I think, from that religious training he gets from Maulvis and all from his childhood, which gets more and more, intense as he grows up. And of course, outside Mysore, both of them were cruel, but it's a relative cruelty. This guy was obviously more cruel than his father. Now with Sringeri, that's a very, very, difficult relationship, which is tough to explain actually. Both father and son wrote very respectful letters to there were two Shankaracharyas who were there during this 40-year period. Both of them write very respectful letters to them. And the 1791 war that you speak, that's the third Anglo-Mysore war.
Right.
The Marathas have invaded.
Yes.
And the one section of the army of Parshuram Bhau, who's a Maratha Patwardhan ruler, chieftain, his army, which was largely composed of Pindaris, the irregulars in the army, who are actually Muslims, they go and raid Sringeri and they actually desecrate the temple. Even the murti, the idol of Sharda Devi is, vandalized. But and at the same time, that is not a theological policy of the Peshwa to go and break temples and so on. So the Peshwa actually apologizes a lot to the Shankaracharya. The Shankaracharya goes on a fast unto death in protest. And so that raises alarm bells in Pune. And they say, oh my God, if the Shankaracharya dies, then it's a huge catastrophe for our kingdom. And so he sends these letters. So at that time, Tipu, who already had a relationship with the Shankaracharya, it's actually competitive politics. Okay. Don't take money from them. I will give money to to renovate this, and he does that. He sends a lot of presents, gifts to install a new Sharda Murti and a lot of offerings also. And so it is in that context that this Sringeri episode, which is shown as a symbol of his benevolence or generosity. There was, of course, respect, as I mentioned, to the institution of Sringeri Shankaracharya because he was such a powerful religious figure. But within a year, actually, so he also tells the Shankaracharya that pray for me, for my victory against the Kafirs. And the Shankaracharya actually does a Shatachandi Homa and Sahasra Chandi Japa.
Wasn't he himself a Kafir too?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a very, very difficult. So the Shankaracharya is doing a Shatachandi Homa for Tipu's victory against the Marathas. So, it's all very complicated and difficult to understand. But the thing that it was not a permanent damage of relationship between the Shankaracharya and the Marathas is proved by the fact that in just 1 year after this episode, the Shankaracharya goes to Pune as a state guest. He's received with all honor by the Peshwa and all of that. So this was a temporary phase where by mistake, these irregulars in the Maratha army, the Pindaris, do what they did, and Tipu tried to take political mileage and advantage out of it by making those grants. So there's several other grants too. Even this Nanjangud, what they say, there is this Hakim Nanjunda.
Right.
That was actually Hyder who, one of his favorite elephants falls sick.
Right.
And someone says, oh, Nanjangud, Sri Kanteshwara is a great, healer.
Right.
So they put some tirtha on the elephant and the elephant becomes okay. And so that's why Hakim Nanjunda, he gives us Patika linga to the temple, which is there even now. So a lot of it was Hyder's pass off grants, which people pass off as Tipu's grants. Tipu was also deeply, superstitious. It is a very, very complicated, mindset. Difficult on the one hand, he doesn't like kafirs. All his letters, he says, I want to kill the kafirs. I want to, get rid of them. But when it comes to saving his life, he doesn't mind getting either Muslim, support or even Hindu worship. So there, I don't know how that works both ways. So many pujas and this and that, and you know how the astrologers, pandits, they'll say this dosha, that dosha, do this puja, that puja. He would get all of that also done. So many of these grants, in fact, in one of the chapters, I've listed all the so-called grants he made. Most of these were personal in nature. That out of this fear that that his life and his kingdom are there for long, he gives these grants for his personal reason, not really any major, love for the religion or so.
But very complex, I think, the way he went about his thinking towards the religious groups. Because in certain aspects of the book, you've also mentioned about own Muslims, the way he descended some of the Muslims, be it the Boras and all of those different sects of Muslims who were not really following him. So he went about killing even those Muslims, despite they being Muslims. So something about how he treated, the other religious groups like the Christianity, and also the Muslims who did not listen to him.
Yeah, the Christians in Mangalore,
right.
They face a brunt of his torture, which to this day a lot of them keep that in mind, and they have a lot of bad memories. On Ash Wednesday, which is a sacred period for them, 60,000, 80,000 of them dragged all the way from Mangalore, on some tied to the legs of elephants, and brought to Srirangpatna, 300 kilometers. Even pregnant women forced to go on foot, many of them delivering babies on the way, some dying there, not even good arrangements for funerals. You had wolves and jackals and dogs eating on corpses, and once they came to Srirangpatna, they were forced to convert. If they did not, their noses and lips and all would be cut off, and they would be paraded on donkeys. So a lot of tortures that way too. Almost 27 churches destroyed in Mangalore, including the Milagres Church, which is a famous one, which was rebuilt later. So the Archdiocese of Mangalore, they have a lot of records about this. Several manuscripts of the time. There's one in Kannada called the Barkur manuscript, which has details of all these tortures that the Kannada Christians faced. Similarly, you had the Mandya Mayangars in Mysore. Their fault was, the foolishness of this persecution is there were two. So once the Vadiyar family is dispossessed by Tipu, the oldest queen of the dynasty, Maharani Lakshmi Ammanni, who was a very brave and sagacious lady. We have a college also in her name here in Malleshwaram.
Yes.
So she starts parlays and messages with the British, and she's in house arrest, and all that she had time for a day was to go to the Venkatramana temple. She was a great devotee, and only once you could go, and that too in strict surveillance. There were people keeping close watch on what she was doing. Now, she would hide these letters in the middle of the puja thali and then take it to the temple, and then the pujari would quietly receive these letters, which were her letters to the British in Madras. And two of her emissaries, known as the Mysore Pradhans, Tirumal Rao and Narayan Rao, they would take these messages and go all the way to Madras, other Peshwas, other people, trying to get support for the Vadiyars against Tipu. Now, these people obviously got to know that this lady was doing all this. They couldn't harm her being a woman. So they tried to harm these two people, but they are too smart for them. Both Hyder and Tipu, they escape. They're imprisoned, but they break the jail also and run away and all this. Now, they belong to the Mandya Mayangar community. Now, because you could not do anything to these two people who belong to that, the brunt of that is borne by the entire community. 700 men, women and children who had no role in this espionage or whatever Lakshmi Ammanni was doing. They were totally divorced from politics. They are called for a feast on the eve of Diwali, Naraka Chaturdashi.
I think they don't celebrate that also.
Yes. And while they're eating, elephants are sent and they are all trampled to death. And to this day, as you said, that community doesn't celebrate Diwali. After 250 years, this was 1785 that this happens. Same with the Christians, and you have the Kodavas also. On 12th of December, they to this day call it a Martyrs' Day, because again he calls all these people for negotiations. And in this place called Devati Param, and so it's a meadow. And when they all come unarmed, they're all slaughtered. And some really ghastly details of how many were killed. To one of his commanders called Zainul Abidin Shustri, he writes that not only the living prisoners but even the dead Kurgis should be converted. So even dead bodies, circumcised and converted to his faith. So you can imagine the amount of brutality and bigotry that could have been, that even corpses are not left alone. And similarly with the Nayars and the Theyas in Malabar. So the warrior classes, the Kodavas, the Nayars, they hated Mysore imperialism, and so they fought back all the time. And Nayars and Kodavas, 5 rupees for one head of a Nayar man, and 3 rupees if you get a woman to your harem. These kind of
incident that one head was very good looking, and then he stopped doing it. Then
that was Hyder in
Hyder,
and so Kodavas being fair and good looking, he said, okay, let's stop this. Otherwise, already some 500 heads had been chopped and put in his presence. And 4 lakh, as Tipu himself says, 4 lakh infidels or kafirs converted in just Calicut. And so many numerous, I have a whole chapter on the list of temples in Kerala which were broken, even churches that were broken in the Malabar region. And all this is documented. And you can, correlate these facts from Tipu's own letters, what the other sources are talking about, including, the missionaries, Jesuit missionaries and others, and the accounts of some of the victim families and survivors who have documented it. Even the British prisoners of war in the dungeons of Srirangpatna, they write about the tortures they faced. So it cannot be just dismissed.
He was barbaric in his way.
Yes.
And I think the title of your book earlier was Mysore's, I think the Triumph of Mysore, if I'm not wrong. Was that the case? No. And then you changed it to...
No, I never would. I would not want to call him the tiger or the tyrant, because I'd never thought of that as... It's as simple as Tipu Sultan. So you put that, you as in the readers can put a prefix of tyrant or tiger to him. That's not my work. Same with Savarkar. I have not called him Veer or Mafi Veer or any of that. You decide. As I said earlier, my work as a historian is to bring the facts to you. After reading all this, if you still feel this person is a wonderful character, good for you. Or if you feel he was not, then good for you as well. So, but let it be informed that on the basis of these, a lot of people may say, Nichesh, that this was a different era. There was so much cruelty. Everybody was very violent and cruel. Obviously, war leads to cruelty. There is collateral damage where civilians, even now you see what's happening in Gaza or Israel, Iran, all these common civilians are also getting killed.
Affected, yes.
But some people are more cruel than the others. I'm saying Hyder was also cruel, but when Tipu does this specifically to target a particular community and attack them on the basis of their identity, kill them on dates that are sacred for them. Deepavali for the Ahingars, then this Ash Wednesday for the Christians. Then it is not so innocent that it is just political violence. It is a cultural and religious kind of violence too that you inflict on somebody only because they don't share your faith.
Oh, very interesting. And talking about Tipu Sultan, the way he went about his war, and Tipu Sultan as a warrior, he did really bring about innovation in the way he went about his battle. So you mentioned about the rocket warfare, the way he went about this innovation. So can you walk us through his innovation in the battlefield? One is the rocket that you mentioned, then there's fortification and strategic defense, in cities like Srirangapatna that you have mentioned. So a bit about the way he went about his warfare.
Yeah, both of them, father and son, credit to them goes. So that's why, as even this conversation is going, we're talking about the bad parts, but there are also several good parts, and
right.
that's how I think an assessment of a person's legacy needs to be done.
Perfect.
Where Mysore had become so weak, especially just before the usurpation. You had very high corruption. You had these Dalwai brothers called Nanjarajaya and Devarajaya who were looting the treasury, and so corruption we see today in Karnataka government also has a history, I think, to itself. So going to several centuries. So and whoever came to attack Mysore, there was never a fight given. You pay them off a ransom and they would take and vanish. For the first time, Mysore becoming a fighting fit, military. Both father and son, the way they organized the army into various kushuns and divisions and all this, arming it with, and Hyder begins the whole process and Tipu continues it, of also building a navy using the ports of Mangalore, Bhatkal, Honavar, these areas in coastal Karnataka, and to make it a naval power, and to ensure that this also gives them access to the Middle Eastern markets for Mysorean goods. All our Mysore sandalwood,
Right.
this ivory, Mysore silk, pepper, spices, all of this going and finding markets in the Middle East, in Oman, in Muscat and all these places.
Just to pause you, there's so much of history behind everything that is relevant today.
Yeah.
Which is so amazing to know, which we would not have known. We just talk about certain characters, but certain situations, be it the food habit, be it the dressing sense, be it the music, be it the way areas are designed, developed, the way governments are run. There's a lot of history in terms of what it was back then and how it's carried forward. But yeah, continuing on that a little bit later, but to what you were saying.
So these markets also that were developed abroad, and as you mentioned, both of them, they innovated, and I think Tipu did more of it on some of the warfare technology.
Right.
One important thing is the rockets,
which he used in the battle of
second battle also, Polilur and others. So when Hyder was also alive.
Right.
So it's not, people say he invented the rockets. I think that is a stretch, because rockets were already in vogue in several parts of India.
Right.
You had it right from the Mughal times, and then the Marathas, the Vijayanagar emperors used it. It was called also Agni Bana, the arrow of fire.
Right.
And even when Bajirao invaded Srirangapatna during the Wadiyar time, he says it's not Srirangapatna, it's Pirangi Patna. So, Pirangis are the Kannada word for the rockets. But what the father and son did is they innovated on this. And earlier the rockets would be of wooden or paper kind of casing. Just as you have a Diwali rocket, you have a pole, and on top you have this one with the batti, right? And that's how it goes up.
Right.
So the casing where the maddu or the ammunition is put, that would be wood or paper. These people changed it to iron, and the iron that India used to produce that time was among the best in the world, much better than what was found even in England.
Right.
And so what the advantage of that was, it could pack the ammunition, the powder, much more strongly inside that cylindrical casing. And because of that, it could go up with a larger thrust.
Right.
And the range also, almost 1 kilometer, these missiles could go and hit the opponent. And at that time, nobody, including the Marathas or the British, had this kind of capability. And so they used it to their best advantage. Whenever anyone came, they tried to bombard them with these missiles, and that's how a lot of the wars, including Polilur and other things which you mentioned, Battle of Vandivash, several places, they win because of these rockets. And Tipu also had a very scientific bent of mind. I think he was a restless soul. Anything that is happening abroad in terms of inventions and discoveries, he would like to know a little more about it. So, in fact, some of the British memoirs, they say, in the middle of a very difficult battle which he is also losing, this man is asking about how to rear silkworms, getting the latest silkworms from Iran and other parts. He's writing letters about how you should take care of this pearls, how to start the pearl fishery, things like this, and exotic plants from various parts. You have the Lal Bagh Gardens in Bangalore, which Hyder and Tipu actually got all the best of plants and so on, brought from various parts of the world. And also if somewhere, a microscope or some new discovery is there, he would want to see those scientific equipment and instruments. So I think several of these innovations he tried to bring into his army particularly. There was also a very big treatise that same man Zainul Abidin Shustri writes called the Fathul Mujahideen.
Okay.
But see the term also. I mean, Mujahideen is somebody who indulges in jihad, and jihad is religious war against the kafirs. So, but then that had, of course, in his library several books on what jihad is, why it is good to be a jihadi or a ghazi, holy warrior. That is also there, but at the same time, how to improve your military to make it a very stronger military power, those were also there. So, as I said, black and white, it's a mix of both.
So, apart from the rocket warfare that he brought, any other innovations that he brought into his military, which is prominently mentioned, or you feel that it has to be really known?
Yeah, more is that's what I mean, making it organized. The military was so scattered.
Right.
So various command and control, divisions, these very strict, administrative divisions within the army also that he made, so that everyone knew who was reporting to whom, what was their roles and responsibilities, very, very clearly laid out. And I think world over, he was also researching about how other kingdoms were organizing their army. And both Hyder and Tipu also start using European help. So French people who were part of the Mysore firmament.
Right, yes.
So it's no longer a surprise that, the Europeans have a different or better way of fight against us. We also have Europeans in our army who will train our soldiers in the European method of warfare. And this is not something new only to Mysore. You had the Travancore ruler, Martanda Varma, who, when he defeats the Dutch in the Battle of Kolachal, and that is in 1748, he gets the Dutch captain to his army and trains his army
based on the
European warfare.
Right.
So that's why there's no more surprise left that they know something that we don't know about.
Right.
So that's one thing that he brought, both Hyder and Tipu. That's why also they aligned with the French. And so that's also a reason why when they say he was a freedom fighter, he was aligning with a very colonial power, which was the French. And as I said, the French, if they had won, if Tipu had won,
we would be talking in
French, and Karnataka would be under French rule, like Pondicherry
was. Yes.
So we need to understand that too, to say, no, don't give these titles
of freedom
so freely.
Yeah.
And the Marxist historians who keep telling us repeatedly that there was no India at all till the British Empire was established. We were not even a country. It was the British who made us into one country. If there was no country called India, what India is he fighting for as a freedom fighter?
Correct.
Of course he fought bravely till his last breath, but he was fighting for himself. For his kingdom,
agenda,
his family, his kingdom and his honor, and very bravely at it. Just as he was fighting the Nizam, the Marathas, he was fighting the British also, not with some far-sighted thing that I'm going to free India from British colonialism. So that is a little.
Was it the same for many other rulers, where they brought about fighting for their own self or own ambitions? Or was it particularly only with Tipu Sultan? Because fighting for British, if we take that as a topic, we talk about Mahatma Gandhi, and then you also, in your books of Veer Savarkar, you also mention about his way of fighting against the British. Are these kind of people really the ones who should be called as freedom fighters versus rulers who fight against the British? Was it more of that personal agenda? So can you give some thought process of how rulers would have fought against British and the actual freedom fighters who we know today?
See, the first time when the thought also, in a very clear manner and in a large part of the country, that these people are here to colonize us and do all of this, I think it's not before 1857, which is the uprising, 1857 uprising, which went across such a large portion of the
India,
country.
yes.
And in fact,
the slavery period started during that time.
Yeah. So Savarkar, in fact, calls it the first war of Indian independence.
Okay.
And from Peshawar to Calcutta, he says there were two main guiding principles on which people fought that uprising, which was Swarajya and Swadharma. So to save your own Rajya also, but also the attack on your religion, which both, so Hindus and Muslims join hands. And that's why even though there is an Nana Sahib Peshwa or Tantya Tope or Rani Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi, they all make a Bahadur Shah Zafar as their symbolic emperor. So Hindus and Muslims both realize that by then British rule had spread to a large, almost the whole of India, barring a little bit of Punjab and northwest province. So they were also doing these missionary activities and conversions on a large scale and deriding Hindu and Muslim traditions. And so that's why they got together to fight unitedly against the British. But before that, I don't know if Tipu and others cannot certainly be thought of as that kind of outlook of a larger India. But just 2-3 years after Tipu's fall, I think Tipu's fall sends an alarm bell, at least in the whole of South India. So in South India, immediately after his death, there are a series of rebellions in various parts. In Karnataka, you had this man called Dhondoji Wagh, who leads this thing. Then in Kerala, you had Palasi Raja, who leads, and they all come together. And together they are clubbed as what are known as the Palegar Wars of South India. You had the Mardu Pandyans, Mardu brothers, two of them in Shivaganga in Tamil Nadu, and Veera Pandyan, Kattabomman, all these people Maradu brothers and all these people who form alliances, once they see Tipu being defeated in this manner and killed, they actually put something called a Jambudvipa declaration, on the walls of the Srirangam temple and so on, where the Maradu brothers very clearly say it is up to all of us residing in this Jambudvipa, which is the spiritual name for Bharatavash, Jambudvipe, Bharatakhande that we call. So all of us need to unite to throw these people out. Okay. So I think the seeds of that larger pan going beyond your own kingdom kind of consciousness comes immediately after Tipu's fall. Till then, a lot of them were fighting only for their own thing. You had, even in Tamil Nadu, you had this Velu Nachiyar in Shivganga, who is a queen who manages to defeat the East India Company and take back her kingdom. Probably one of the only rulers of the time who managed to defeat the East India Company and get back a kingdom that was lost to them. But it is too small a thing, so no one takes it into account. But in Tamil Nadu, in Shivaganga, she is still worshipped as a Veeramangai, so very brave lady. So there are numerous people like this. But this Jambudvipa declaration, and then you had something in Vellore, a Vellore mutiny, which happens in 1808, 1806 or so. And then other parts, slowly, you have the tribal revolts, Birsa Munda, many of these other people, Santhal rebellion. Once British colonialism started going beyond just the military occupation, and they started affecting the economic lives of people. Peasants start coming out in rebellion. There are tribals. You had Sannyasi rebellion in Bengal and what is now Uttar Pradesh. So all of that was building up, and I think the culmination of that was the 1857 uprising. It was like a bomb, that volcano, slowly the lava, is gathering steam, and boom, it comes out in 1857. But from 1857 till 1946, when we had the naval mutiny in Bombay, there was an unending chain of the revolutionary movement, which was the violent uprising against the British. Initially restricted to Maharashtra, Bengal, but slowly, Punjab, other provinces, United Provinces, which is UP, everyone getting into this rebellion.
Very interesting, because most of the history textbooks today, that's how we all learn history or know about our country, don't talk about a lot of things that happen in smaller parts of the country, specifically down south.
Yeah.
It's about the north, the Delhi, Delhi, and all that happening around the center part of the country. But down south is very rare that history textbooks really talk about it, which we will come to in terms of how history should be read specifically for students. But before we get to that part, a little bit again on Tipu Sultan and the end of Tipu Sultan, right? You've mentioned in your book, in the chapter, and then came Wellesley, that's how I pronounce it, right? You've spoken about how Wellesley's arrival in India marked the major turning point for Tipu Sultan. So how did Tipu, move during this entire phase, and how did he fail in the last, the fourth Anglo-Mysore war? So, how did he misread the British and the growing power of Britishers under the rulership of Wellesley?
So, as I mentioned, the third Anglo-Mysore war with Cornwallis, he is defeated, and he takes it as it's a huge insult for him,
right?
Giving away his sons, and it said that after that he made a promise that he will never sleep on his royal bed. He was sleeping on ground of a mattress made of grass. Until I take revenge, I'm not going to sleep on that royal bed, is what he had made a claim. And so in those few years in between the third and the fourth war, which is 1792 to 98, about 6 years, rapidly he starts sending emissaries everywhere, all over the world, to the Turkey, to Constantinople, all these places, to the Shah of Persia, saying, there he's appealing to them on their religious sentiments, saying this is the larger Ummah, the Muslim Brotherhood, and I am the true Muslim ruler. And to show medals of honor, I have killed so many kafirs, I have burnt so many churches, I have burnt so many temples. So I am the true ruler.
Which is the case even today when we speak about terrorists, right?
Yeah. It's a larger Islamic Brotherhood.
Yeah. So I fail to understand whether this is something taught in the scriptures,
of course,
in the Islamic tradition, or is it something which has just come by certain rulers and then passed on through generation?
Well, that is a completely intense topic, but of course it cannot just, if it's just a few rulers who bring it out, it cannot sustain itself for centuries. Obviously there's something fundamentally wrong in some tenets, which people in the modern era need to look back and see how much of this is relevant, and but it also strikes at the fundamentals of that faith itself, and that's another discussion altogether. But yeah, he was actually very much influenced by the Wahhabi ideology. You had the Wahhabism, which is the more kattar, the very rabid, pure Islamic this one, which was gaining ground at that time. And he was sending these missions everywhere abroad. So maybe some of them got in touch with these Wahhabis. So a lot of that ideology you see infiltrating Mysorean polity also. And during the two wars, as I said, he was sending these emissaries everywhere. Just 2 years before his death, he sends a mission to Afghanistan, to Zaman Shah of the Durrani family in Afghanistan, saying a very clear plan. He says, you invade India, and together let us do this over 2 years. In the first year, let us cleanse the whole of northern India from Kafirs, which means, all the Rajputs and the Jats and Sikhs and everybody. And then the next year, the South India, so whether it is the Marathas, we'll kill both of them. Then both of us, let us meet midway and let us divide this whole subcontinent among ourselves and declare India as an Islamic caliphate. Those are his own letters to Zaman Shah. And Zaman Shah actually writes back saying, I am happy to do this, let's collaborate on this. Then he also sends, so these letters are being watched with alarm by the British. And they're all quite unhappy with Cornwallis, saying at a time when he would have just killed him and got done, he gave him another lease of life. So they were gathering evidence against him bit by bit, saying, why you're a threat. And he was unmindful of that. No good counselors. He had started making everyone, distrust him, especially not only the Hindus. Hindus had started deserting him because of his bigotry, but even Muslims. His own prime minister was Mir Sadiq, who turned traitor. The Kiledar of Srirangpatna was this guy called Mir Nadeem who turns traitor. So everyone thought he was just losing it. He was in Delulu half the time, and no clear thinking at all. And so French, letters also to Mauritius, to Paris, you're sending all these, letters. He's also exchanges a letter to Napoleon Bonaparte, who's himself fighting wars all over there at that time after the French Revolution, and saying that, you invade India and let's together get rid of the British. So the British were gathering all this, and so when Wellesley comes, he says, let's kill to the finish, not give him another lease of life. And he makes so many strategic blunders. I document it bit by bit. It's almost a sad, tragic downfall. But he was responsible for it himself because he had no good, completely surrounded by sycophants who would not tell him the truth. And he started having all these megalomaniac illusions of grandeur, that I am so great, I can do no wrong, I can face read you, I can, all kinds of stupid, beliefs. And so it so happens that when the British finally encircled Srirangpatna in 1799, there was a news that the once, impregnable fort of Srirangpatna, there is a breach that they have made. Now the news reaches him. He doesn't even take it seriously. He believes some fellows who will take him to some place and show some stones that have fallen and say, "Ha, ye theek kar denge, we'll get it repaired, you go relax." But actually the breach is somewhere else, waiting with wide open arms for the British to enter the fort. And even on that morning of 4th May, he's sitting with Jyotishis and other people, both Hindu and Muslim, and they're telling him all kinds of rituals to do. There's a iron pot full of oil, and you have to look into it and your reflection. So, nazar utarne ke liye type of a thing, and giving some grants and elephants and something to various people. And after that, he's just sat down to break his bread and have his meal. The people come and say the British are at knocking distance inside the fort, and he's so scared, and he leaves his food. Lot of people had told him that there is a secret passage through which you can escape, live to fight another day, regroup yourself and come back. He tries that also, but these Mir Nadeem and Mir Sadiq, whom I mentioned, they block those doors. They know what are the exit routes, so all of it is blocked. And quite late in the day, he realizes that, okay, they have all turned traitor, so I have to go myself and fight. So he gets on his favorite horse, Mir, and goes to fight. He thinks if the Sultan himself is on the battlefield, it will invigorate all the soldiers. Now the soldiers also, at the time when the British are expected to come in, it's all choreographed by traitors inside. All the soldiers are taken away to some room and locked in the pretext of paying their salaries. So salary, they're thinking that, salary payment day, everyone goes. Well, the British happily walk through the fort without any, resistance. And that is when he realizes that nobody is there to stand with me. And there's only his physician who comes along with him, Raja Khan. And while they're going, there's a huge, volley of something that hits him, and the mayor dies, and he tumbles and falls, and he gets stuck amidst a huge heap of dead bodies. And from there, I think those Raja Khan's memoirs, which are there, he says, we were looking at how the entire thing was crumbling in front of us. Dead bodies, mangled masses going all over, dead bodies burning. Suddenly a huge ammunition thing burns up. There's a inferno of sorts. And this man, imagine, he is sitting there and literally seeing his kingdom crumble in front of his eyes. And at that time, some British soldiers, he's lost his turban also. Correct. And so some British soldiers who are coming in, they look at this guy. He's wearing a very bejeweled sword belt. And they don't know that it's the Mysore Sultan who's there. They think some common guy, and they say, "Give that to me," and he resists. And they try to take it, and he tries to play his sword, and they get very annoyed, and they take a pistol and shoot him dead and take that belt and go away. And Raja Khan is still alive, but he hides under the corpses to be this one. By sunset, nobody knows where Tipu Sultan has gone. Has he run away? Has he hidden inside the women's apartments? No one knows. The British enter his palace. All his sons are so scared to see the enemy at the door. Nobody knows. They go and search the Zanana. Nowhere he is to be found. They thought he has escaped. Then, they say, let's go on a search party to find him somewhere. So, by then it is dark night with the mashals. They're all going through and by then Srirangpatna has become a rampart from hell,
Right.
with dead bodies and vultures and burning flesh and all of this. And there they hear someone moan, and that is Raja Khan. And then he says, the last I saw Sultan was that side. And when they go there, amidst a heap of dead bodies, they move it, and in the middle of that, they find him. His eyes are wide open, and his hands are clasping the sword. His body is still warm. The British actually think he's alive, and he may just spring up and, attack them. And these are eyewitness accounts of Alexander Beetson.
Illustration on that.
Yes,
I think
yes.
part, right.
Allen, Beetson, all these people who go on that trail. And then they discover the body and they bring it back and they realize he's dead. And they give him a ceremonial burial and all of that in Srirangpatna at the Gumbas. And the children are packed off. His family had 25 children, 13 boys, 12 girls, 600 women. All of them packed off from Srirangpatna and sent to Vellore, so that they are in the Madras region. And there they try to instigate this rebellion. And that is when the British said, we've had enough of them and we'll send them all to Calcutta, right under the Governor General's nose, so that they don't do any more conspiracies. And it is said that the family of Tipu Sultan is still there in Calcutta, some remnants. Many of the sons die on the way from south to the east. Some die in Calcutta under very terrible circumstances. Some, the families living in great poverty and all of that. But many people say, this is a kind of poetic justice. They started from there, when the Hyder was stuck in that Nagada, owing money to a debtor, to coming now to another state of poverty. But in the middle, you had these 40 years of an interregnum where father and son actually changed the course not only of Mysore, but I would say Indian history as well.
Correct. Very well said. And we speak about the downfall of Srirangapatna and Tipu's death. Tipu, known as the Sher-e Mysore, the king of Mysore. And, what stood out at the end of his entire story was just big eyes and dead body, and amidst all the dead bodies over there. So it goes on to also show that the Britishers really wanted to eliminate anything that comes their way. So the way Britishers also looked at ruling India was quite different than the way Tipu Sultan looked at ruling India. So a bit about coming to the relevance of Tipu Sultan today, which I would like really to understand from you, because Tipu Sultan is history. But beyond history, today, how one should look at characters like Tipu Sultan, characters like Savarkar or Mahatma Gandhi or the Mughals for that matter. How do you think students and young India should feel about Tipu Sultan and so-called rulers in India? Do they look at them as, of course, we're not trying to debate between freedom fighters versus just rulers, but in general, looking at students and the relevance of young India, how should young India look at historical figures?
As they are. I think they should be looked, the word itihas, which is history, it actually translates to it thus happened.
Happened, yes.
So I think extrapolating these characters with definitions and yardsticks of today, to say Tipu is secular, that one is, I think it just doesn't make sense at all. So this is the complexity of this man and of his father and of other people. So the book is not only about him, but I think in the process what I've tried to paint is also a picture of the larger landscape of India in the 18th century. Who are the other players and characters, how most of them eventually ended up failing India, which is why India finally fell. So I think instead of getting too sentimentally attached to some of these people, which is how it happens, one must also draw lessons from there. There would be good elements of their rule, but also remember what are the bad things they did, and those also should be emphasized. Now, in Karnataka, of course, it is a huge controversial thing. So if the Congress comes to power, there will be one Tipu Jayanti. If the BJP comes, they will say we'll remove Tipu from the textbooks. I don't subscribe to both. Where you should read about them. You can't wish away your past. Just because I don't like him, I will remove him from textbook means, I mean, that is the most foolish thing to do. You have to read about everyone, the good, the bad, the ugly. And then that is how a young Indian will understand what are the positives also, but the huge negatives of a person which should not become role models for today's generation. So I think a very balanced and nuanced view of history and historical characters is essential. So much we get emotional about Tipu, right? I mean, this Tipu Jayanti, which led to such a repolarization. Yes. Section 144 has to be imposed. Right. 2 people were killed in firing in Kodagu and all of this. And everyone, I mean, the Christians of Mangalore, the Mandya Mayangars, the Kodavas, all of them came out in protest. It was not a political thing only. There's intergenerational memories and trauma associated with whatever happened. So in such a case, we get so to politicize it, we do all this. But actual legacy of Tipu Sultan has the same government which has spent so much of taxpayers' money to do this silly Jayanti. Have they bothered to, renovate his fort? Even his
very interesting thought. Yes.
I mean, look at his. If you go a little beyond the airport, Devanhalli airport, there is a fair. You can't even make out. There's a small board which says birthplace of Tipu Sultan. So if you actually go there and see, it's a completely broken fort. Occupied by all kinds of antisocial elements, and there is nothing to commemoralize that spot. Foundries where he made these armories and maddus and so on, those are getting destroyed. His fort in Srirangpatna, or if you actually take a visitor who comes to Srirangpatna, take them through the trail of what the last day, 4th May, where did the British come from, where did they go, you should have a guided tour for people to go and see how Mysore eventually fell. All that will not be done. But you will install 108 feet statue. Then you will change the name. Should the Devanhalli airport, should it be called Kempegowda? Should it be on that? There will be debates and fights for years and months and wasting everyone's time and energy. I think all of us in Bangalore...
Very rightly said that the government should look at it in a way, if there's history, how to keep the richness of the history alive. That's very important, which is not happening, which is happening very well in the West. Right? Or in European countries where they preserve history. Correct. They make history a place where today's youth can come and see their past.
Correct.
Which is not happening in India. I wouldn't say it's not happening particularly in Karnataka.
All over India.
Throughout the country.
Correct. Maybe except Rajasthan, which knows how to maintain and also showcase its heritage. I mean, even in Maharashtra, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj is an icon. Everything from an airport to the railway terminus, everything is named. If you just say Shivaji, there'll be some people who will come and beat you up. You have to say Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. But his forts across, and Shivaji's greatest power was the fortifications that he built. Nothing. Most of those are in such a bad shape. And including the Shaniwar Wada, the Peshwa's palaces there, those also in very, very bad disrepair. In Srirangpatna, as I'm saying, it would be such a lovely thing for someone of us. If you go to Srirangpatna today, the fort has been broken, after the British invaded.
Correct.
There are some pieces here and there. If we go on a guided field tour, saying, the route, you have a map also to see, saying this was the where the breach was, this was where Tipu's palace was. Why can't it be a nice guided immersive tour for the people? Instead, as I said, we are debating foolish things. I don't think Bangaloreans want to know, we will care any less if you call that airport Kempegowda or Tipu Sultan. We would want a high-speed metro train to take you to that in 15 minutes rather than 2.5 hours we take to go from South Bangalore all the way to the airport. But all of people's mind space, media mind space is just hijacked by these, horrible politicians on issues that don't matter, to divert public attention from actual things that really matter. And none of them care for history, because if even the people who made this Tipu Jayanti, if they cared for Tipu Sultan, these elements of his birthplace, his death place, if you are not even showcasing that, then what right have you got to just, waste taxpayers' money on some stupid birth anniversary, which nobody did in 200 years after his death?
Very, very well said. And people like yourself who really know the importance of history in today's era or in today's world, you've never thought about changing it or getting into the political side of things.
No, not at all.
To make things right. I mean, politics can also be good if there are good people or the right people who are entering it.
Yeah, I think that needs a different kind of mindset, which I certainly don't have. I have no interest in politics or politicians. I'm just a bystander like all of you, seeing in horror how most of the politicians are ending up ruining this country, this state, this city. Bangalore's the shape in which it is right now, you cry tears of blood every day that, what a beautiful city and what have we led it to. Yeah, I think it needs a different muscle to be a politician. I'm happy being a author, historian, and probably contributing to the intellectual corpus of the country.
But your work has definitely sparked debates in the politicians' entire circle, which
if at all they manage to read.
If they manage to read, that's right. But I think it has to a large extent. And the more you write, the more debates will follow, probably in a very positive way.
Hopefully, that's the hope.
A bit of your foundation. Has your foundation done anything, or do they have certain agenda of restructuring certain historical figures or or the structures? Does your foundation work towards these things?
Totally. So I realized that me writing one book, this book took 5 years to research, write. Right. How many will I be able to write in whatever is left of my life? So I think there's a need to foster new scholarship in Indian history. Okay. And with that aim is what this Foundation for Indian Historical and Cultural Research, FIHCR, came about. We're just about a year old now. And we do multiple things. One is we run a fellowship in the name of the very celebrated nationalist historian, Sir Jadunath Sarkar. Right. So through a nationwide call for applications, people can apply with a proposal that is evaluated, very stringent process, and 5 to 10 people are selected. The first batch is just graduating in August this year, and they are given a very generous grant of 15 lakhs per annum. And a lot of mentorship and support for research, with the ask that at the end of that 1 year, they have to come out with a publish-worthy manuscript. Okay. So every year, which is meticulously researched but also popularly accessible for people. Don't couch it in such jargon that no one wants to read that book. Okay. So every year, 5 to 10 new books coming out of this fellowship. Wow. We're finding hidden talents. In fact, now the second batch applications went out, and we have got almost 200 applications from across India. Some really superlative, proposals, and people with PhDs, postdocs, even 70-plus-year-old people have applied for this fellowship. So that is something, that is one part of the foundation. We also have a group called the Projects Team.
The Projects Team. Okay.
Projects and Research. And so it so happens that a lot of our history is written in languages we don't understand. Okay. Sanskrit, Persian, right. Pali, Prakrit, all of this, and even Sen Tamil, the older. So, me as a modern historian, to start learning all these languages, it will take me a few lifetimes. Right. So we thought, why don't we form a multidisciplinary group where our first project is with the Nalanda University on the rise and fall of Buddhism in Bharat. Wow. And so in that, along with the two historians, we also have an archaeologist. We have a scholar of Pali, Prakrit, Tibetan, a Buddhist monk and philosopher, all of us going back to the primary sources as they are, and bringing the evidence out, and that will come in a 3-volume series on the history of Buddhism in India.
Is that something you're going to be
yes, it's going to come out. No, the entire team is
writing.
Yes. Okay. So that is just one project. So like this, we have 4-5 projects already running. One is on debunking the whole Aryan invasion theory with latest evidence that has come from various fields. So this also is not a history problem. So our team currently, the multidisciplinary team, has a historian, an archaeologist, a metallurgy specialist, someone who's a molecular biologist and a geneticist, and someone who's into phonetics, and language, Proto-European, language, all of that together, how to, and there's been a lot of scientific evidence which has come now of genetic mapping of the tribes of that time. You had excavations at Rakhigadi and Sinoli and Dholavira and all this, which gives a new view to ancient Indian civilization. So, but that needs to come out in a concise way which common people can understand. It's in some academic journal which with so much of jargon that no one wants to read it. What is the point? Jungle mein mor nacha kisne dekha? So that has to come out in a accessible book. So that is happening. We're also doing something on the Indic models of leadership. Indian models. So when we talk of leadership, we only look to the West and Western frameworks of leadership. But what were our ancestors? There was the Arthashastra, the Chanakyan model.
Correct.
There was a Niti Sara model. Then there was a Tirukkural model. The Cholas followed. So all of these can be make a framework for that.
So what is your role when you are looking at all these
I'm the
things?
the central.
You get people.
Yes.
That's your main. You get people and you align them with your vision.
Yes, and then they work together, and I monitor as literally the project overseer, director to see that. And we're doing one on the life of Ahilyabai Holkar, the famous queen of Indore.
Right.
This is her 300th birth anniversary. So we're doing this in association with the Madhya Pradesh government. So to document her life and achievements. We're doing one on the history of Jaipur and its royal family, one on the Hindu history of Kashmir. So like this, several projects which the projects team would be undertaking, and all of these books are going to come out by the end of this year,
So
next
only
year.
the books that you're going to be coming out with, or will it be documentaries, movies?
That also. So yeah. So
a lot of movies today, I mean, especially the young India have seen history through movies, I would say.
I agree.
Baji Rao,
Yes.
and your
Padmavat
and all of that.
True.
So we don't know how much of that is, factuated or something.
No, the most of it is
is
fact-free.
drama. Okay.
So the third aspect of our foundation is something called Yuva. So which is, I mean, all of this we can do, but if it doesn't reach the youngsters of the country, I think it's a waste. So for children and young adults, how to make history interesting, exciting and inspiring. So for that, we are doing an entire program only for that. Through our efforts, we have reached across India close to 3.5 lakh children in various states. And we just ran a Sri Aurobindo National Essay Writing Competition on Indian history for grades 6 to 9. Got a lot of entries and prizes and all of this. We are producing books. In fact, our first set of Yuva books are going to come out on a new and interesting way of looking at Indian history. That's getting launched on the 12th of July by Srimati Sudha Murthy and Sri Yaduveer Vadiyar and Sadguru Madhusudan Sai. So these books, so children don't like anyone to be preachy to them. I think you need to talk their language in the way they understand. So it could be nice illustrated books, animation videos and social media as you mentioned, or also using modern technology. We have tied up with one organization called Who We Are, using VR technology to actually, you put those VR headsets and you can see like how the Brihadishwara temple was, or how would Hampi have been if it had not been destroyed, or how the Nalanda University would have been if it had not been destroyed, preceded by a small lecture on history. So that will spark some interest and curiosity in a child. So that is another initiative which
all of these aspects the government should be looking at. But you're doing their work on I mean, you're taking their work forward, I would say, on their behalf. But
what they have not done.
But really amazing to learn all of these things under your foundation. And hopefully at Sapna, at an individual level also, would love to participate in all that you're doing.
We would need all the help and support from Sapna, being such a large bookstore chain. And as I mentioned, and I don't mean it as an exaggeration, I think very few bookstores are closing down these days, as you know. But someone who really puts the heart and soul into this whole otherwise very cutthroat just business of selling books. And with the challenges you face of e-commerce and everyone eating into your space, for you to even be doing this is not something that is simple or something that is commonplace. So all credit to you and your group.
No, thank you. In fact, a lot of people ask me in terms of who your competitors are.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't talk about any other bookstore or probably online store or anything of that sort. But our real competitors are those people who don't read. So I think
very well put.
With books like yours, with authors like yourself, if that competition is broken down, if it doesn't remain a competitors anymore, then I think we've been able to get more readers.
Correct.
And more readers would mean more books, and more books would be in bookstores doing well, which is the need of the hour in today's society, which is really going down. I wouldn't use the word drain, but it's going haywire, I would say, in many aspects.
And there's another major problem, which at least I'm trying to plug in a small way, is, all of this we are chatting now in English. I've written books in English. I think in English, write in English.
Speak really well in Hindi, which is quite surprising. I've seen a couple of your news episodes where you've spoken so well in Hindi. I don't know from where that has come. You've been a local boy?
Yeah, but also studied in the north, and I come from a multilingual background of Tamil father and a Maharashtrian mother.
You picked up the language quite fluently, as a Hindi scholar would do, I would say, in many of the aspects.
Yeah, but so only 5 to 6% of India and Indians, I think, consume content in English. Right. The actual soul of India is in the Indian languages.
The diversity.
That is what connects people to their roots. And there was a recent survey which said 98% of online internet users actually like to consume content in Indian languages. But these books also, well-researched books or nice, interesting content never make the mark to the various languages. We have 22 Indian official languages. How much of a business opportunity does that possess? Let's not make it as a social philanthropic thing. Correct. That is also there, but even in terms of a business opportunity. So that is where we came out with this a new startup, me and another friend of mine who are co-founders, Sandeep Singh Chauhan, and this company is called NAAV AI. The full form also is Navigating AI Across Vocabularies. So using AI, how can we reduce the turnaround time for translations? Bring out more and more translations. So there's a huge demand, but the supply is simply not able to meet that growing demand for content in Indian languages, is what we feel very strongly. And the next growth for the publishing industry particularly, I think, will come from this. It will come from language market. It will come from audiobooks and so on, which people will want to consume in their own language. So even Audibles and all have, I think, audiobooks largely in English, maybe some in Hindi and so on. But what about all the other bhashas of the country? So can we use this emergent and much talked about, everyone is talking about AI these days, how can it be used to our advantage? So the company has just been 6 months old, but so these books that I mentioned, which we are doing as part of the Yuva books, I think for the first time in the history of Indian publishing industry, if I dare say, on the 12th of July, we are having the English book and also 6 Indian languages translation of the same books being released on the same date.
Huge congratulations on that. Applauses to you and your team. I think you would be one of the very few historians who are actually modernizing history by using technology, by thinking for the young India, for the future of India, which seldom happens when it comes to a lot of historians. I've not read a lot of books on history, unfortunately, but to whatever we have read, specifically textbooks or what we have seen on the TV channels, a lot of history is just kept as history. How to bring it in relevance today. You've been able to do that to what we have heard of your foundation. So kudos to you, your team, and this is really exciting times for students, for younger generation, that history is not of the past.
Correct.
It's
for publishers and bookstores.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So once all these books start coming in Indian languages, so we are currently servicing 6 languages, which is Hindi, Marathi, then Kannada, Tamil, Telugu and Malayalam.
The main 6 languages down south at least.
And all the 4 south.
Marathi is.
In our next phase, we have to take up Bengali, Odia, Assamese and Punjabi and Gujarati. So we're trying to. So yeah, I'm also trying to now understand my friend and co-founder. He comes from a tech background, complete tech space. But I'm also now understanding what foundational LLMs are, how we are teaming up with Sarvam AI to see how we can improvise the quality of translation.
Right.
And as a publisher, as a bookstore owner, there may be inhibitions in the minds of people that, oh my God, is a machine going to write my language, my book? How will it be, and so on. So no, I mean, we've always said in our team in NAAV, we actually have we have hired an entire team of professional translators for each of these languages. So the machine, the tool that we have created, it will give you an output which is probably 70, 75%, 65% accuracy, but that can't be readily printed as it is. So the translator will then go through line by line, make those changes, capture those changes, which then go back as a feedback to the model, so that iteratively it can learn to improve the next time. It's literally like teaching a child a language. So we have a human in the loop all the time. It's AI assisted, but human refined solution to something so important, which is creating, content. An audio book, it may take 2-3 months for someone to go to a studio. Here a 400 page book can be converted to the first cut of an audio book in 1 hour or 2-3 hours maximum. And then that can be further refined with surround sound, music, effects, all of that to make it a very immersive experience for the user. And that's what we are currently building there. So I think as authors, as publishers, as bookstores, we all need to be very alive to the opportunities and also challenges that modern technology will bring.
Rather than this is a saying which you're walking, that particular saying. The saying is that AI may not replace humans, but it may replace those humans who don't know how to use AI.
Exactly, that's very nice to say.
You are doing that are using technology with human interference. You're able to use technology and humans together to produce something which is good for the society.
Yeah, instead of lamenting, that, oh, we'll lose jobs.
Right.
I mean, the same in my growing up years when computers were first introduced, people thought human beings are going to lose jobs because those time all the job was some typist and stenographer, which you don't need today. But people upskill. The quality of the job becomes better. You don't lose the job. So either upskill or be killed. That is the motto of the new, knowledge-based economy in a world ahead. And I think it's high time those of us who are in the creative space actually wake up and adapt. And it is going to help us scale in terms of volumes to levels we can't even imagine. And so then every author, every bookstore owner or publisher wants their book to reach out to as many people. So this is an enabling factor. So instead of resenting it and so on, I think
you should embrace the change.
Embrace and then make the best.
Stagnancy is death, right? You have to keep on evolving.
True.
And be in times with what the modern times are. But it was wonderful. But I have one more very interesting segment which I want to do with you, particularly. Some questions we're going to be shooting at you. And we want your very candid response to it. It could be a single line, it could be a sentence, it could be just a word. And we want to really understand you a bit more beyond your books.
Okay.
The way you think, the way you go about doing things. So it's going to be called History in a Hurry with Dr. Vikram Sampath.
Wow.
Questions to you which you will answer very candid. It could be a single word, a sentence, a phrase, the way you want to answer, but it has to come from your heart.
Of course.
One word to describe Tipu Sultan.
Complex figure.
Okay. A historical figure you'd love to write about next.
Ahilyabai Holkar.
Okay. Are you already working on it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. One moment in Indian history you wish you could witness live.
The Vijayanagar times.
The Vijayanagar dynasty.
Yeah, Krishnadevaraya's time.
Fantastic. Okay. If Tipu Sultan was alive today, what would shock him about modern India if he was in Mysore right now?
That all his armories are in such bad state and people pay lip service to him than anything to retain his legacy.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. Hyder Ali or Tipu Sultan, who was a better strategist?
Hyder Ali, any day.
Any day, okay. A historical myth you wish people would stop believing?
About anything in general?
Yeah, anything.
That we won our freedom through non-violence.
Okay, a Savarkar fan here.
Not a fan of anyone.
Okay. The most underrated ruler in the country?
Oh, so many of them.
Few on top of your mind?
I would say Maharana Bappa Rawal and Lalitaditya Muktapida of the Kashmir Karkota dynasty.
Wow,
which you would not have heard of.
Unheard of. Okay, a bit of homework for me though.
Yeah.
Okay. Your favorite Indian history book, not written by you?
The entire set of Dr. R.C. Majumdar.
R.C. Majumdar, okay.
Yeah.
What has he written last?
I mean the history and culture of the peoples of India. It's an 11-volume series.
Okay. Start from what year?
From the ancient times till the freedom movement.
Fantastic, okay. If you could ask Tipu Sultan one question, what would it be?
Why were you so brutal to so many people?
Are you spiritual?
Very much.
Is it? Okay. What's harder, digging through 200 years of archives or explaining history on X or Twitter?
Any day the latter. Or worse, in news channels where, unlike a podcast where you can speak so much, they're limited time, 15 minute, 20 minute, and people want yes, no answers. Was he good? Was he bad? I mean, everyone wants binary. Shouting at the top of his voice. So I find myself very unequal to that, though I do it.
I would love to see you, Sai Deepak and Shashi Tharoor on the same platform. I don't know whether that's happened before, but...
No, we have individually done, I think. Me and Dr. Shashi Tharoor and Sai Deepak and Shashi Tharoor. But all the three haven't.
It will be very interesting if that happens. If that happens, please send me the ticket to witness it live. Okay. One word to describe each. Savarkar.
Misunderstood patriot.
Patriot, okay, that's an important word here. Gandhi.
Hyperbole.
Okay. Tipu Sultan.
Again, very enigmatic, complex.
And Shiva.
The all-pervading.
Very nice, very nice. Which biography of all your 10 books that you've written took the biggest emotional toll when you wrote it?
Gauhar Jan.
Because you could connect very well with her?
Yeah, it was a very sad story also. And despite all her achievements, the first recorded artist, the first woman of the subcontinent, and the kind of miseries that not only she, but all women of her time who performed what they faced. I think it was very sad. And as a student of music myself, I think that somewhere made it
quite emotional.
Yeah.
Nice. Which historical figure surprised you the most as you researched them? It could be any characters of any of your books.
I think Savarkar.
Savarkar.
Yeah.
You didn't know about Savarkar before you started the research?
Not as much.
How did you get to understand that you want to research on Savarkar?
I think he was being talked about everywhere. Politics, in election rallies and manifestos. But nobody knew who the hell this man is and why is he coming into our
people would only quote him in bits and pieces.
Correct.
For their own benefit.
Yes. Both proponents and opponents.
Right. Interesting. Okay. One historical figure you've always admired, it could be in the world or in India, but you've never got a chance to write about it yet.
Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj.
Interesting. Seen the movie or the series? There was a series about
him?
I think so.
There was a movie on his son, Sambhaji
Rao, I think.
Chava.
One criticism of your work that actually made you reflect deeply.
There's so many criticisms. So
something that acted as an advantage to you, or
I wouldn't call it a criticism, but it was more self-reflective because I think before my first 3 books, that were before I did my PhD. And when I see later my own books, when I come after that, I see the world of difference in the way sources are referred, critiqued, all of it. So yeah, I think several people had told me that then. That time I was writing more as an amateur who's interested in history. But I think a grounding and training in the craft of a historian is so important.
So Goharjan happened before your PhD.
Yeah.
Was it one of the reasons why you took up music as your subject in PhD?
No, music. It was history of music.
History of music.
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. But yeah, that was one reason. But I was always interested in music. Also, I started learning classical music at the age of 5.
We have a question on that.
Oh,
but we'll
God.
get there.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you still coming back to the question? Are you practicing Hindustan classical music?
No, I learned Carnatic music. Yeah, no longer able to practice anymore.
Can you sing something for us?
Not at all. My gurus will disown me.
Is this something that you've just started to practice, or you've been?
No, from the age of 5.
5, okay. So I think it's okay for you to sing a line.
No, now I've just lost touch because now talking all the time.
Okay.
I think Sangeet and Sahitya, you have to choose one of the two. I don't think both is very much possible. But I'd learnt under several. I was very fortunate to be, exposed to it at a young age by my parents and my maternal grandmother. I had very eminent gurus in Bangalore initially with Vidwan Srivatsa, then Vidwan D.V. Nagaraj. Then I had the honor of learning under two very, famous musicians.
Okay.
One is Srimati Bombay Jayashree and Dr. Jayanti Kumresh.
Wasn't she the one who sang?
Sigara. The Zara Zara.
Yeah.
Okay. People remember that but
moment.
poor lady has decades of training in singing Todi and Bhairavi, which people forget. Even the Life of Pi, she had sung for that. And Dr. Jayanti Kumresh, who's a Veena maestro, who's in Bangalore.
Do you play any instrument?
No, I used to learn the violin, but later switched to vocal. So it was 26 years of learning.
Hopefully we could get you to sing one day.
Someday.
Very, very nice. Very different side of you we're able to see now. Okay. Speaking of music, any Indian music artists that you really like?
Oh,
it could be of the past or it could be of the present.
The present, two of my favorites in Hindustani is of course Kaushiki Chakraborty and Sikil Gurucharan in Carnatic music, who's also a dear friend. In fact, both of them are friends, and I just binge hear them both. Like beautiful voices. This apart from my gurus Jayashree Akka and Jayanti Akka.
How much time do you give to music in your day-to-day schedule?
Nowadays it's just dwindled. Before it used to be like several hours of practice, including waking up at 4:30 to keep your voice. Yeah. Now it's all gone because of this constant talking on podcasts and book launches.
But we already discussed we're going to be having you for another time.
Yeah, then I'll probably hum a bit.
Perfect. Okay. Couple of last questions. Your dream panel. If you could host a dinner with any 3 historical figures, who would you choose and why?
3 historical figures of the past.
Historical figures of the past. Yeah.
Wow. That's a tricky one. Whom do I choose? There's so many of them.
If you want to choose more than 3, it's allowed.
Okay.
But minimum 3.
Minimum 3. Okay. I'm very fascinated by Lakshmi Amarni, Maharani Lakshmi Amarni for sure. Then from Assam, this man called Lachit Barphukan, who won a huge battle against Aurangzeb's army in the Battle of Sarai Ghat. Like to meet him and understand why and how did he manage that.
Do you dream about these people?
Most often.
Seriously?
Schizophrenia of kinds. You're so much caught in the past.
Yeah.
Right? And oh yes, of course, Goharjan. How can I not invite her? So yeah, she had captured my mind, thoughts, dreams, imagination, everything for so long. It took a lot to exorcise her off my life. That should be 3 of them.
Wow.
1 queen, 1 warrior and 1 singer.
Brilliant combination.
So we can have diverse conversations.
You'll have a big audience also in front of you if you get these people.
Correct, yeah.
You're going to break the TRPs.
Totally.
And the last question is, out of all the books that you've written, which one according to you is your favorite?
Never will be able to say that. It's like asking a parent, who is your favorite child?
Of the 2 child.
I think each one is so special, and there's so much of a backstory to all of it, which I only would know. And so someday many people are telling me you should write a book on the journey of writing each of these books. Especially, books like Gohar Jan, the kind of
the research,
the trail that went and how it possessed me. And
is the journey pretty much similar to across all the books? Or
no, each is very, very different. Depending, some there is no sources, some there is too many sources, too many conflicts.
Which one would have too many sources out of the 10?
Savarkar, even Tipu Sultan. Lots of.
And the most difficult would have been?
Gohar Jan.
I think you also mentioned that when you went to the archive in the Mysore Palace,
that's where
you saw very little about her.
Yes.
And then you had to, go a little bit more deeper to really explore her life.
Yeah. Nothing known. She was a tawaif, and so no legal heirs, no students, nobody would identify themselves as her, whatever. So then it becomes difficult. You're searching for a needle in a haystack, and so how do you do that? And
so that was the most difficult project.
Very difficult. It was,
which is why it also became the most emotional, also because you really had to give in your blood, sweat, and tears.
Correct. Yeah, and she changed my life. I mean, that book got me the Sahitya Academy Award. It got me an award in New York. It gave me an opportunity to do a PhD. I think she must have felt that finally someone has written about me, so let me bless this guy with a lot of things. I hated my day job. That gave me an opportunity to then leave that job and take up what I love. And it helped me establish probably India's first digital sound archive for vintage gramophone records called Archive of Indian Music.
Is it part of your foundation?
Yes, it's now part of the foundation. At that time, of course, it was in 2011, and it was set up with the help of Mr. Mohandas Pai then. And then, of course, if you go to SoundCloud and Google Archive of Indian Music on it, search for it, you will have about 2,000 tracks free of cost dating back to 1902, which people can listen freely from the comfort of their home. So that was set up then. Now it's come under the part of the foundation. And FIHCR would not have been possible without my friend Bhavesh Agarwal, who supported the entire journey. So a lot of these people... Ola, yes. So without a lot of these people's support, very few people, Bhavesh is one who actually puts his money where his mouth is. Most corporates just talk. When it comes to culture, heritage, history, literature, no one wants to invest in that. Correct. But for him to be very generous with his time, with his money, with his support, more than just giving money is one. Ola is also helping us build the team through the Ola Foundation. That itself is something very great.
Well, fantastic, and that's a wrap.
Thank you.
Excellent conversations. I'm sorry if I've missed certain points in any of
we covered all of it.
Our talks. But I look forward to meeting you again and doing a couple of more, if not just one more.
With pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.